Hello, dear pastors and female pastors of Brazil and around the world. It's a pleasure to be with you here. My name is Teoli Valgas. I am one of the pastors at Central of DNA, the church where Central converted me. Now I am a pastor here. What a joy. And I wanted to continue with you, and I know you just went through the 6th step, which is the opening of the cells. My God, what a unique experience in the church that is in transition, a wonderful experience. And I know you are like this, radiant, and with great expectations of much greater things that God has to do through this church that has been born. So I wanted to continue with you to the 7th step. We are going to talk about something that is considered, without a doubt, one of the pillars of the church, of this spiritual church, of this spiritual temple that we are building, which is called supervision. Dear ones, supervision is when we continue this work of follow-up, discipleship, and preparation of these leaders who have just taken on these cells. And this role is fundamental for the health of the small groups, for maintenance, in the sense of continuing to grow with this healthy church. And it is sensational, and I wanted to guide you here. But what leads us to live and give everything we have been experiencing up to now? I know that you are already going through the steps, all of them, knowing each challenge, having the opportunity to live, to, be transformed and transition your heart as well. I know you are going through a time of personal transition, but why? Because the mark, right, of love for God, it has to come through obedience on our part. So we obey God when He says, look, go and make disciples. This then generates in us a compassion, a love for others, of course. This then generates in us the desire to evangelize, to consolidate lives. So if we combine this, love for God above all things and love for others as ourselves, this is a foundation. This is something that motivates us to live this church we dream of, a church that wins souls, that believes and goes after the lost. And that's what we are talking about. But look, it's not just about evangelism and consolidation. So just look at this strong statement given by this unforgettable pastor, David John DeChoo, who was one of the greatest pastors of the current church, including the largest church in the world. And look at the statement he makes. So powerful. Supervision is a key factor behind healthy cell churches that bear fruit. My God. What a powerful statement coming from a pastor who was such a reference for all of us. But after all, dear ones, what is this supervision? It's easier for us to define this supervision through the purpose it will have for the church, in its practice. I would like then to guide you in this, giving you the functions, what the supervision will actually be done by you. But look, Pastor, are you going to be in this process throughout? You were and will be the first teacher of that leadership school that we worked with you there. In the 5th step, you will also be the first cell leader. When the cells open, you will lead a cell, of course, and you also, dear, will be the first supervisor. Now, when the cells are already happening, do you know why, Pastor? Because you need to have this experience. You need to live this moment. If you delegate this moment, if you pass it on to someone else, no matter how trustworthy, nice, or capable they are with a good position, you will miss out on experiencing and living the process there together with everyone. And you might not experience the church and this growth as much as we desire. So it's a change, radical. That will start first. Do you know where in your ministerial life, in your personal life, to lead, to be at the forefront of this church? So a complete restructuring, which is sensational but necessary. Why? Because what will happen in this supervision, what will be demanded of you, we will see shortly. But something you need to understand, your priorities will need to change now at this moment. Your schedule will need to change. The work format will need to change. Of course, you remain the same pastor, and eventually you will have your visits. You will have, your administrative meetings, of course. But the emphasis now, the focus, the priority, think now is your people, your leaders. As Jesus did, He focused there. There were so many needs, so many demands, but remember, He focused on the people. He focused on that group. He was nurturing, caring for, because he was working with that first group, which would later reach everyone. So it is exactly like this, Pastor, that it will be necessary for you to take on this role now as a supervisor. And this involves all this transformation in your ministerial life. So your focus now is, look, I'm repeating because this is fundamental for you to be successful. Like a football coach, you need to be there on the sidelines. You need to observe your athletes there. Like a successful coach who lives the processes, he is there, he guides. Now the focus is on your followers. They are now the priority of your schedule, of your way of working. We develop all of this. It's a very beautiful work, which I personally am passionate about. But then in practice, how will this supervision happen, dear ones? Look how interesting. We work and believe that it is through what we call the ladder of success, which is to lead ourselves to their great objective, which is multiplication. So, our objective as pastors and supervisors is to make our leaders look that win people, consolidate people, train people, send these people to continue this wonderful work. All of this in the end is what this generates multiplication. So that is our great objective. And when we talk then about multiplication, it's clear that it's important for me to tell you that we are not talking about cell multiplication. Pay attention, look how interesting. We are talking about the multiplication of leaders. And this will, of course, make the cell multiply, but our focus is on the leaders. So the multiplication is of the leader. But it doesn't stop here, then your church will continue to develop. But the pastor's job as a supervisor is to then lead these points that are on the slide here, to evangelize. We will then help these leaders fulfill their purpose of developing themselves, leading their own selves to live an intelligent, relational, successful evangelism that wins people at work, at home, in schools. So we will teach them, we will walk with them, so that they can be successful in this task, my role, yours, as a supervisor, and then to lead these newcomers to what? To baptism. My God, how special it is when you manage to train a leader and help them to lead their new cells to baptism. This is a radical turning point in that leader's life. They are never the same kind of leader again. So your role as a supervisor at this moment, it will be to help your leaders bring people to baptism. And it doesn't stop there. After they are baptized, they are on the journey, they are developing. Now we will guide them to the school. My God, what a milestone, what an important time. I remember when my leader, Marcelino, back then, I got baptized, and after a while, he guided me. I said, but can I? It's too soon. He said, no, uncle, look, God has a path for your life. And that was so special for me, so important. So we as supervisors will help these leaders take their groups to the school of leaders so that they continue developing. And lastly, of course, we will assist in organizing the multiplication of their group. We will help so that he can assist his leaders in being successful in multiplication, setting their goals, objectives, and organizing in that direction. My God, it's an amazing work that we love. We see a sacrifice, but we see a great reward in the performance of the pastor as a supervisor. So important. But look, so in the end, what this pastor supervisor does is play roles. In the end, he performs important roles. First, a shepherding role. Of course, logically, we are going to be pastors to these cell leaders. But look, that's obvious. It's obvious, but we have to understand that there are different aspects here. We are going to take care, continue discipling them, their lives. Of course, this is an important and fundamental role in supervision, but it doesn't stop there. It's not just about care. They need the role of a supervisor also in management. Look how interesting. Why? Because someone who is a manager, what are they? They are seeking growth, expansion. They want information. They want details. For what? So that everyone is successful in this task. Remember the example I gave of a football coach. We can say that indeed a coach, they have their team, they train, but in the end, What do they want together? They want to win that championship. They want to keep growing, winning, being victorious. So they need information. They need techniques. They need to observe and manage. So it will be a fundamental task in their life. Moved on as a supervisor. Data, for example, there was a year here when we noticed that there were many people without baptism. How did we notice this? Through the information from our cell system, we saw there was a large number of people without baptism. So we mobilized the entire church and took action. Through the cell lessons, more than 500 people were baptized that year. My God, how amazing. Through good management, someone who looked, gathered the information, worked with the entire team so that we could be successful in that task, and also leadership. But what is leadership? Remember, Moses, remember the great men of God. Remember Jesus Christ himself. How did he lead? How did he directed? How he guided? Exactly, that is the role of leadership and supervision. The supervisor is also someone who provides the path, who shows the way, who is out in front, who presents a goal, presents a direction, and everyone follows. So he is essential, a leadership role for supervision to continue developing and for those cells as well. Amen. So continuing here, what is it? What roles then in practice will the supervisor have at this moment? So look how interesting, Pastor. But like this meeting, you will have coffees with these first leaders. So informal coffees, but it can be scheduled as well. You will have specific meetings with these leaders to discuss the cells, talk about them, and work on these aspects of management, leadership, and shepherding in their lives. Then you will meet with them, and you can also use the leaders' service for as long as needed. Even today, we have leaders' services here, and before the main service, you meet, call your leadership, have a word, give direction, but also through what we call the big cell, where all the cells gather there, and you, pastor, supervisor, are observing, walking among the people, seeing your leaders, taking care, and following up. At this moment, the supervision will act in this way, pastor, in a light, more focused, deeper manner through these meetings, these actions that are so important for this work that is beginning to develop. Amen. And of course, you can already imagine, because I know you are a dreamer, I know you have great expectations, but now let's imagine a few years from now. You are being successful in this transition. You now have opened the cells, started the cells, you are a supervisor, there you are, right, with about 20 to 30 cells. Then begins what we call a second phase of supervision. And for that, I would like to invite you to sit here at the table with me. We are going to talk about this second phase. And the emphasis of this second phase, pastors, is when we are going to structure this church to have now a supervision team. Wow, how cool. But let me give you a tip. Don't rush. Don't rush. Remember, we don't set a specific number here, but it's between 20 and 30 cells that you will need to be concerned with. You will need to look now at the structure of the supervision. But up until then, it was you with these tasks, with these actions. You were the supervisor of that moment. Amen? So I want to bring the camera over here and continue with you here. In this second phase, pay attention. We are then going to appoint new supervisors. We are going to organize. So, discipleship groups, my God, how I love planning visits to the cells. And we will conduct individual discipleship. So, of course, Pastor, we are going to prepare a team. You will appoint, of course, you will observe leaders who are successful, who have been successful, that is, initially leaders who have multiplied their cells. You are observing that they have an out-of-the-box vision, someone who is showing love for people with the vision. These are the people initially that you will prepare, you will train. So in our resource kit, you will receive a very cool material, which is a training for supervision. Exactly. Then you will appoint those leaders who are standing out. You will bring them, train them, and then we will set up a small group with them every 15 days. We will have a series of meetings with specific messages. We will work on many things for this work to happen, but I wanted to give you a very important tip here. When you appoint these leaders to be supervisors, they need to continue leading a cell, okay? Do not fall into the misconception that now they are in another position and that now they are only a supervisor. No, from our experience, that's not good. He ends up becoming an inspector, losing the sensitivity of being on the front line, like a coach, remember. Who is there observing, watching, acting together, and he becomes an inspector, and then it's very bad. That doesn't work. So keep this leader as a leader. And now he has an added advantage because he is someone with a different vision. It's a passion here. He will become a great cell supervisor. Amen? So preserve that. So how do we conduct these meetings now? You train these new supervisors, right? What is their schedule like now? How is this work done? This work is done, which we call GD. And this GD, look how interesting, is composed of that new supervisor you promoted, right? And under this supervisor, there are up to 5 leaders. Why 5 leaders? Because we have to remember that everyone is there, they work, they have their homes, their families, their tasks. So, if we place too many leaders under the supervisor, it can overwhelm him. It can even make his work ineffective, and he will end up getting discouraged, tired, and then sometimes he might even quit. So, up to 5 people under this supervisor is what we believe to be ideal. So these bi-weekly or monthly meetings, we put here as monthly, but preferably bi-weekly so we don't become too distant from the supervisors becoming too distant from these cell leaders. Imagine meeting once a month only while our leaders are in this world, constantly receiving information, experiencing other things. Once a month, you meet to talk about supervision, to take care of their life. No, it's not like that. So we wanted to make this suggestion. Every 15 days is a good number. It's a good schedule for you to have successful supervision. Amen. So, look, just one meeting, just for discipleship and another for supervision. So that's 2 per month, for example. So one will be for discipleship. What is discipleship? A powerful word for them, coming from you, of course, Pastor. You will work with your supervisors, and they will pass this on to the leaders. So a word of encouragement, a word that you are observing the moment of the church, to encourage these leaders, to give them motivation to move forward. So it will be a time of discipleship, and the other moment is the time for supervision. Why would that be? Supervision is when we will handle the information from the cells, we will take a look, the reality of the cells, and we will help them. What we have already discussed, we will observe and help them understand the points, what we need to do, what strategies are needed at this moment. So these are the 2 moments we will work with them. So moving on to the next slide, I wanted to say that this material will be available to you in our kit. There are other complementary videos there, and also 2 years, look how interesting, 2 years of content for you to work with in supervision. So it's already something to inspire you. I know it will be a great blessing in your life, all this content, this experience that you will live. And of course, over time, you will mature as a supervisor and then raise other supervisors. In the second moment, this will be a very special period in your life. But of course, we always need to emphasize this. And it's time for you to prepare yourself, dear pastor and pastor who are listening to me. Why? Because this church in Celio, of course, requires a lot of work. We say here the following, that everything that requires work, like here, where we are in Brazil, in our region, there is the famous food that is made on a wood stove. Perhaps, I don't know how the translation will turn out, but it's a dish that is made in a setup that takes hours for the fire to catch, to heat up. The pot sometimes takes time for the food to be ready, 3-4 hours depending, but the final result of that food is wonderful. And of course, a cell church that we are dreaming of in the future, it requires a lot of work. But I really wanted to encourage you, even though it takes work, you will need to reinvent yourself, review everything we talked about here regarding your schedule, your life, this church, the focus of this church. It will be a lot of work, and it's not for someone who isn't willing to work, someone lazy, but it will be very worthwhile, and I believe it will be a very special time in your life and in your church. Why? Because the supervision we are talking about here is the key to the victory of the church in cells. Seriously, if you didn't catch anything, I would like you to remember this. Supervision is the key to growth, organic, healthy, and both quantitative and qualitative of this church. So the focus on supervision. Engage in it, and do not let this pillar of supervision be outside of this structure so that this building does not collapse. Amen. I know it will be sensational. So, after experiencing this intensely, you will realize that now the church is no longer a church that had a cell ministry. The cells become the heart of the church, and everything now happens through people arriving, converting through small groups. We look at it thinking, dreaming with them, leading, guiding this. My God, this gives a feeling of church happening, my God, and it will be one of the best years of your life, I am sure. It will become the heart, because in the end, what does all this mean? Dear ones, in conclusion, there is no love without service. Love requires from us dedication, of course, always. There is no service without a commitment, without preparation, without something that we commit to focus on and deliver. But of course, also there is no commitment without sacrifice. Everything will require effort from us. Everything will require from us, look, a dedication that will cost us. But it will be worth it, because the Lord is coming back, and soon we will be there celebrating. But in the meantime, look, hands-on. And I know that you who are listening to me here, going through these processes, all of them, understanding, studying, preparing more and more, you will be very successful in this task that God will give you. Amen. So may God bless you. It was a pleasure to be with you here. And of course, for us to now continue and move on to eighth step of the transition, which, look, I hope you are excited. I would like to invite here my excellent friend, one of the best pastors there is, Pastor João Vitor. Come here, please. I would like you to welcome him here to continue and advance with our transition. God bless you, Pastor.